Thanks, Karen. Also, anything we missed in the recording, will, in terms of reporting, will be shared out in an email following this meeting, so no information will be lost. Shifting from reporting, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, the monitoring team also oversees all of our fiscal and administrative deadlines that are associated with these grants. We do have a handout similar to our reporting calendar that details these fiscal deadlines for all rounds of funding and for all types of grants within Cal ICH. For those of you who receive either HAP or other ERF funds, you've probably received this handout. However, we will send it out again following this meeting. For this program, the ERF 3L grant, the first fiscal deadline is June 30th of 2025. So we do have a little bit of time, which is great. That deadline is for 100% obligation and 50% expenditure. So what that means is that 100% of your original award needs to be contractually obligated, as well as 50% of those funds actually spent. Again, we will go into a little bit more about what obligated means and how Cal ICH defines obligation following this slide. The final deadline for all funds to be spent within this program is June 30th, 2026. One thing to note also is there is a 5% administrative maximum associated with these dollars. I do want to note that the way that Cal ICH defines administrative costs may be a little bit different than some of the other grants that you work with. Our definition for administrative costs is very, very specific. So it's really any type of costs, time, or services that are spent in administering this grant solely. For those of you who are working with subcontractors, any administrative costs that your subcontractor takes on is not considered an administrative cost for Cal ICH and would not, therefore, not be a part of that 5% max. We have a lot of supports that can help to explain that more, but we want to make sure that the funding is as flexible as possible and that you're able to use, obviously, the bulk of the funds on services and the projects themselves. One last little note here at the bottom of the slide. So we monitor progress towards these deadlines based on the quarterly report. That is why those quarterly reports are so important, and we will provide additional support as these dates get closer. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. This is the excerpt, from statute that explains where these deadlines come from. So these deadlines are written into statute and unfortunately cannot be shifted or extended. It also talks about what should happen if these deadlines are not met. For the obligation component, if an obligation requirement is not met, then there is an alternative disbursement plan or additional information that will be required from grantees to explain how you plan to obligate those dollars that were not met. When it comes to expenditure deadlines, that one's a little bit stricter. So if a expenditure deadline is not met, then we do need to recoup funds. We are happy to say that we have not been in that situation as of yet, and we plan to not be. Our goal is to assist you in spending these funds. We know that communities need them, and our goal is to get to the path of yes. So should you feel that you are in jeopardy of not meeting one of these deadlines, we encourage you to reach out to Cal ICH sooner rather than later so we can get some supports in place along with our home-based partners to creatively problem solve and get you kind of across that finish line. Go ahead and move forward. So this last little component that I will speak to is describing obligation a little bit more. Obligate, as defined within your contract, means that the grantee has placed orders, awarded contracts, received services, or entered into similar transactions that require payment using ERF funding. As it's written in statute, obligation is a contractual requirement. However, we understand that some of the dollars that are incorporated within this grant can't necessarily enter into a contract. And so that's why we have some of these other kind of stipulations that allow us to meet that requirement. We have a handout. I've spoken of a lot of handouts, so I apologize for that, but they will all, again, be distributed to you after this meeting. This last handout talks about the different opportunities that you have to meet that obligation requirement. And I'm going to show a couple on the screen. We're not going to go into depth today because we've already shared quite a bit of information. However, I encourage you to review this handout to look at the different categories that we've included, and then reach out if you have any questions or if there's any gray area that you're wondering if a specific cost that you're taking on falls within these categories. So advancing to the next slide.
Ellen, there's one question in the chat. I don't know if you want to address that now. We can also wait whenever you're ready.
Thank you for catching that, Garen. Yeah, happy to talk to that now. Laura asks, are we required to expend 100% the prior award before expending 3L? Cal ICH does not have any restrictions or stipulations in terms of the speed of which you spend your other grant programs. We'll solely be evaluating you on your ERF 3L dollars. So strategically, if it makes more sense to you to hold on to other dollars, you're welcome to do that. It's really kind of up to local level decisions in terms of how you prioritize your spending. The only thing that we'll monitor is that the actual expenditure deadlines have been met, regardless of the other funding streams you have made available to you. Thanks, Karen. So these first two tables discuss some of the different opportunities or examples of how we have interpreted placed orders or awarded contracts. Obviously, awarded contracts is a very easy thing to track and monitor. If you have any subawards, all of those dollars would be considered obligated once you execute that contract. It does need to be an executed contract. And so that's one thing that's important to know, that those contracts should be executed prior to June 30th, 2025. Placed orders is more so looking at goods or services where you have placed that order. It might not be as it might not be in a specific contract, but you have purchase orders or other documentation to substantiate those costs. Moving forward to the last two, received services. So these are examples of services that have been provided to those individuals that you're working with or entered into similar transactions. This is the one that gives us kind of the most flexibility and opportunity to work with you all should you have trouble meeting the obligation deadline. We've had a lot of really interesting and creative conversations with our grantees across the board, so including HAP grantees and ERF grantees, to ensure that everyone can hopefully meet this obligation requirement. Again, I encourage you to look at this handout, start to think through some of the costs that are associated with your program, and then reach out to us should you have any questions about obligated funds. I believe that is all that I have, so I'll pass it off to you, Garen.
Cool, thanks so much, Ellen. Just a couple key takeaways. The quarterly report contains cumulative data and it's requested quarterly. Your first quarterly report will be due January 31st, and then the first spending deadline is June 30th, 2025. I'm going to do just a quick poll just to check for understanding. Just a little pop quiz to keep us on our toes. So it's 2 true or false questions. Cal ICH uses quarterly reporting to track progress and identify technical assistance needs. Many of the numbers in the report are cumulative and inclusive of corrections. All right, some responses coming in. All right, I'll give it like 10 more seconds. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll now. So here are our results. These are both true. These are both true statements. So yeah, looks like almost everybody kind of understands what's going on. So yeah, at any point, any questions about reporting, you can email us, you can email Homebase, you can email Cal ICH, and we'll make sure your question gets to the right place. So I'm going to lead us through just a quick introduction to technical assistance and what we have available. So Just quickly, just a very quick note about Homebase. Homebase is, we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to building community capacity. Our focus is on preventing and ending homelessness, reducing poverty, and thriving in inclusive communities. We do this in a few different ways. We help sort of build systems of care. We kind of engage directly with people with lived experience. We do some strategic planning, visioning, and planning. We do a lot of work on cross-system collaboration, specifically, most recently with healthcare, with criminal justice systems. And also, we have a, a practice related to data to inform action. So one note, just a couple of notes before I go into a little bit more depth about what we have available for technical assistance. You should, I believe earlier in the call, I believe Crystal mentioned that you should have gotten an email recently with just inviting you to a group assessment for your technical assistance needs. This is an hour-long call where we'll spend half of the call sort of hearing about each other's projects. They're usually, I think there will be 3 to 4 communities on each one of these calls. So we'll spend half of the call hearing about those 3 to 4 communities and what their encampment resolution project sort of entails and includes. Then you'll spend the other half of the call getting a one-on-one kind of assessment with someone from Homebase about just sort of how your project is going, starting up, and what are needs that you've already identified, what are anticipated challenges that you have going forward. So yeah, this is just a great opportunity to sort of jump right in, receive a bit of technical assistance from one of us, and also hear about what's going on in some other communities. So so we do technical assistance in these 4 different ways. We have what we call community learning groups, which are sort of peer-oriented, sharing-oriented group TA that is very often focused on a specific topic, but the goal is more to sort of get people in touch and talking to each other. We do some one-on-one technical assistance where you can just get on the phone with one of our team members and talk through an issue that you're currently experiencing. We have a foundational training series. So these would be sort of more didactic trainings. Very often they're related to kind of evidence-based practices. So we've done some on motivational interviewing, harm reduction. We have recordings of those trainings available. And then we also, every quarter, we bring all of our grantees together for some targeted sort of information sharing and community building. I'm going to describe each of those kind of in order. But before I do that, I want to make one note just about who TA is for. So it is for you all, the grantee organizations. It's also for any sub-grantees. It's for any service providers you're working with within encampments, and any other partners or stakeholders that you think are important to your community's encampment response. Everybody's invited to TA. So we have a newsletter, a TA newsletter that goes out twice a month. You should feel free to forward that to any partners that you work with. You can also forward the link to sign up for our listserv to anybody in your community you think would benefit from TA. So yeah, this is an open invitation to participate in TA for anyone who's involved in your encampment response. I'm going to start with talking about our community learning groups. So we have 2 different tracks, you could call them, for our community learning groups. One is for direct service staff, and that would be kind of frontline staff or service program supervisors. We also, and so some of the topics for direct service staff, some of the things that we've dug into are outreach, interim housing, criminal justice involvement, substance use services. Those sorts of kind of direct service questions are what we're dealing with in this group. We have another community learning group for system leaders. So that would be grant administrators, program directors, government leaders. That's where we talk about administering the grant. It's where we talk about project management, marketing, questions like that are in the kind of system leader CLG. And the focus of the community learning groups is a little bit more discussion oriented. We'll very often have like one sort of topic that we'll deliver a bit of subject matter content on that topic, but the goal is more to get communities sharing and talking with each other. As I mentioned, we also have one-on-one kind of direct technical assistance, and we do this in a few different ways. As I mentioned earlier, our team has a lot of direct subject matter expertise. So where your question sort of plugs into one of those topics that we have direct subject matter expertise on, we'll just do that. We'll sort of talk through our expertise and what we can have sort of a deep TA conversation. We also facilitate peer sharing. Like if we find a few communities that are having a similar issue, we'll bring folks together to sort of talk through that issue together. We can also help with just sort of general brainstorming, troubleshooting. If there's something that you're puzzling through, but we don't have direct expertise on the team or through our partners, it's often valuable to just get on the phone with like kind of a third party person to sort of talk it through, brainstorm, see if we might be able to come to a solution. So any issue that you're having, definitely bring it to us at home base, and we'll find a way to figure out a way to help. Just some examples. We led one community through establishing an onboarding process for a new system lead, and all of the sort of like budgetary and system adjustments that had to come along with that. We provided some technical assistance there. We also assisted with planning an on-site legal clinic for undocumented residents, and that also involved like a peer sharing component on that same issue. So yeah, the like moral of the story here is just be in contact with us and we'll figure out a way to help. Foundational trainings. So we have 2 coming up. Actually, why don't I start with the right column here? These are all recordings that we have available, and there are more than these. These are just what would fit on the slide. You can see that a lot of them are, like I said, these sort of evidence-based practices like motivational interviewing, trauma-informed care, and yeah, we will share a link to kind of a playlist of all of those recordings. Additional trainings that we have coming up. In November, we have a training on understanding the human-animal bond, just related to encampment residents who have pets, and figuring out how to sort of prioritize them in housing. And in December, we're planning a training on connections to healthcare, Medi-Cal, Medicaid. So yeah, this is what we have coming up. These will all be recorded, and we'll keep the recordings up, and we'll send you the recordings of the trainings that we've done so far. Finally, there's our all grantee convening. The next convening will be coming up in December. We had one in September, so yeah, the next quarter will be December. These are largely community driven. The focus is always on sharing emerging best practices, celebrating successes that have been going on throughout communities receiving the ERF grant across all of the rounds. They often include just some light free work. At our all grantee convening in June, we had communities submit something that they are an area of expertise that they've developed throughout the grant, and then also an area of expertise they're looking to develop. So what's something that they're strong in and something that they would like to be stronger in. And then we did some peer sharing like that. We also had some kind of we had communities in September submit aggregate data and sort of report on their program strengths. And that gave everybody some information about what the numbers look like community to community. So just some notes about how to connect with technical assistance. So for the main way to connect with technical assistance, or 2 main ways. One is to sign up for our newsletter, which we'll send out a link to that if you're not already on it in the follow-up to this message. And the other is to email this ERF email address. And I'll put that in the chat now. And through the newsletter, you'll receive notice of community learning groups and trainings and how to register for those. For the email address, that's how you can connect with one-on-one technical assistance. I'm going to launch another poll here. We just love to hear if anybody has participated in TA yet and sort of what your experience has been. Hold on, something's up with the polling. All right, I think the polling is broken. Maybe just tell us in the chat box if you've had the opportunity to attend technical assistance yet, and then whether you found that technical assistance helpful. Wait, hold on. I just figured out what was going on with the poll. I'm going to launch it now. I would actually love to hear answers to this, so I'm going to launch the poll. I'll give this 10 more seconds. Looks like we've got some responses. A solid group, it looks like, have attended some technical assistance. Many haven't had the opportunity yet. And some folks are saying that they haven't had time to implement yet, which is totally natural. Yeah, cool. So thanks so much, everyone. I'm gonna end the poll now. All right. So just a couple key takeaways again. I'll send out a link to this mailing list in the follow-up email, which is how you can sort of stay up to date on upcoming group technical assistance. And then you can email this address to get connected with one-on-one TA or with any other questions about our TA opportunities. I'm going to leave a moment for questions. You can put questions in the chat box. You can also come off mute and ask a question. Anything that we haven't had the opportunity to address yet. I counted backwards from 30. So one maybe last call for any questions, or actually that's a lie. It's not the last call. You can email us anytime with questions, but any questions you'd like some sort of live answers to, last call for those. All right. So we're just gonna wrap up really quickly. I have one final poll. This one's just for feedback. We'd love to hear how this call was, whether you found it helpful, and any suggestions you have for future grantee orientations. I'll leave this up for maybe 1 more minute. It looks like responses are still trickling in. Want to give people a chance to give us feedback. So yeah, we'll take 1 more minute and we'll wrap up. All right. 10 more seconds and then I'll end the poll. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. So with that, thank you all so much. Thanks for joining us today. We're looking forward to working with you all.